gentlemen, those who are joining us right about now, we are glad to have you on board. It's always a pleasure to have all hands on deck. It's the Kickstarter of this 13th day of January 2025, and we're going to be speaking deepening decentralization and devolution to support development, a critical look into the guidelines for service delivery standards across the country and how things are moving, especially in light of the challenges and relative successes that have been registered with local governments across the country. Well, Uganda's aggressive decentralization policy has created many small local governments with that work hand in hand with the central government, but there are concerns of high administrative costs. This particular discussion is one that is both fluid and complicated in equal measure. With me in the studio are two gentlemen whose understanding of these matters is unquestionable, and they will be helping us with a perspective. Many thanks for joining us. On my extreme left, I have with me the Deputy RCC Rubaga, Henry Kitambula. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You've done what I would call perambulation, Mukono, Jinja, now Rubaga. Should I say you're now at the Holy Grail?
Actually, Machi Indi, and
Mukono,
Jinja, now Rubaga.
Should we say you've arrived?
No, because I was here before.
You were here
I was
before.
in Machi Indi. This is my second time to work in Kampala.
Okay.
And I think I know, I'm happy that I know how the main city works, and I know how local governments also work. Okay. So I haven't reached. I'm still in transit.
We're glad on the journey that you're taking. No doubt, Godspeed, and many thanks for joining us too. Joseph Ochieno, a seasoned political analyst and also honcho at the Uganda People's Congress. It's a pleasure to have you on the show once again.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris. Good seeing you this new year. Good seeing my brother who just moved from Edinda. I was just planning to stop over and say hi and reminisce about the city that we left ages ago, but he's escaped that. So Rubaga, we can always make a comeback.
All right.
Yes.
Allow me to begin with him right away,
yes.
Given his good offices as a resident city commissioner. The fundamentals of decentralization do hold firm when it comes to your own work dealing with local governments. Before we delve into the nitty-gritty about service delivery standards and how we have performed, the challenges, the successes, and how we can go forward, just bring us up to speed with the status of local governments or governance within the country right now from your own perspective.
I think it's good that you have started with me. The local governments, I can say, are doing what they were intended for. So you know there was a plan by government. The intention of government to decentralize was to bring services closer to the people.
That's right.
And as such, the Local Government Act, when it was being enacted, they made it in such a way that at the local government we should have policy making and then the implementation. So the intention was to have a bottom-up planning, As we enter the budgeting process, the local governments right now have actually they have been, many of them are even done, holding budget conferences to get views and ideas on how the budgets of various local government units can really be. And when you look at the composition of the leadership per se, we have an inclusive composition. We have the councillors, including the councillors representing the special interest groups. Say that as you are planning, the interests of for example, the PWDs should be catered for. The interests of the youth should be catered for. The interests of the women and so on, and elderly and so on and so forth should be catered for. And that is at the policy making level. So when we are making policies at the for example, the division, at the district, at the sub-county. Those representatives are very instrumental, and in fact, they constitute the biggest percentage of the policy makers at, for example, a district or at a sub-county level. So to me, I think by and large, the local governments are not doing so badly. Of course, we have challenges. We have challenges that I also want to sort out. In the local government, we have around the
if you don't mind, Mr. RCC, we shall be tackling those challenges a little bit later. What now I want us to begin with is the overview, so that we can have a comprehensive idea of exactly where we are right now.
Yes.
And you've touched on that, no doubt about it.
And maybe the other thing I have also left out is, because I was on the policy, the implementation.
That's right.
The implementation, for example, we have the roads designated for sub-counties. We have the roads designated for the districts. And the government is supporting these local governments, the sub-county and the districts, with the funds to carry out, for example, infrastructure development. If you have ever heard about Duka roads, the district, urban, and rural community roads, access roads, that Duka. We are supporting these local governments through that arrangement to enable them construct the roads for the sub-county, the roads for the district, but also there is another support of under the road fund. You remember recently they were given up to 1 billion in addition to the money they were getting. So they have the capacity to implement many of the things, especially the things designated for them.
Governments. I love it when you say they have the capacity to implement. We shall be interrogating that a little bit later. But allow me co-opt in Mr. Joseph Ochieno. The decentralization agenda, reform and policy implementation is now into year 27, so to speak. Yeah, and that alone shows that it's one of the most bold moves that were taken by the National Resistance Movement government in a bid to align service delivery and be able to bring the locals on board in terms of decision-making, planning, as well as execution. I know you might have some reservations here and there, but by and large, especially given the fact that this is one of the policies that many other countries across sub-Saharan Africa have been required to undertake over the last 3 decades, Uganda should be in a really good place, isn't it?
I know you are trying to persuade me. You're trying to persuade me to love the idea of NRM decentralization. But you've also talked about 27 years. When I was coming to your studios, I was thinking through these things. I try my level best to be as objective as possible, and while I was at the green room, waiting to come on air, I was having a conversation with a young person, and I was trying to push them to think objectivity, and to think, to push them to think evidence. Unfortunately, there's actually no evidence that the NRM decentralization agenda, if you call it, has worked for me. Okay. I am a Mukedi. I always put that disclaimer. You and I come from the same sub-region. And I think away from my academics, away from my politics, away from my other experiences, I think my lived experiences. So my brother has talked about elements of infrastructure. When I look at Nagongera, and I look at Busolwe, and I look at Butaleja, and I travel between Nagongera and Tororo, and I come from Tororo to Edinda and into Kampala, I see huge disconnects. Only last week I was in Nagongera and I was having a conversation with a group of young people, including very generous political activists who are NRM, who are looking towards joining UPC. And part of the conversation we were talking about was whether or not at the town council level we've got not only the infrastructure, but we've got the leadership and capacity to actually transform this little once upon a time small town into an urbanized and fast urbanizing space that it is. You look at the roads as discussed, you look at things as basic as dispose of waste, and you go to a local community center which is actually next to a local health facility, and you ask, where are the local councillors, where are the local political leaders, and where actually the community in this? And you find that possibly the people who've been allegedly elected to be able to perform their service in the last 3 to 4 years are absolutely absent. You can then go to Toro town and then come to Kampala and see the experiences that I have when I'm coming via Nigeria to town. No, these things in principle are okay. I can tell you that when I look back to a centralized government, you know, that we once had, and I look at the services that they then provided, except maybe for limited elective representation that was possibly absent at the time at equivalent of maybe at LC3 to equivalent, I really don't see the difference. So, no. Nation states, and that's Africa, and thankfully I am having these conversations up to and including going towards the African Union. You know, the chairperson discussions taking place. We've got candidature from Kenya, Djibouti and others, and you know, I have conversations around these things, and infrastructure is part of my interests as a continent, as a people. You know, Africans, we will have to begin to think fairly deep and fairly heavy. Centralized strategic thinking for infrastructure, centralized strategic thinking for, you know, big things around our economics and big things about our employment and big things about our environment. They will not be things that will be defined from Bosolo. They will have to be strategically thought from central government. And then you go ahead and work with the local government and RCCs and then local communities to embed. These are programs that should come from the top, meaning a government should strategically have a national plan to say, look, how many urban centers have we got? How many big roads have we got? How many big bridges have we got? Centrally, think through and say, okay, this one falls in Bosolwe. Which district is that? Who you guys in Bosolwe? Where are you? What can we do for you? That's really how it's done. And that should be the bottom-up approach. Cannot work. People in Nagongere don't understand why internet doesn't work. Some people even in the outskirts of Kampala have no clue why they had no power yesterday from 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday in a relatively posh part of Kampala until 7 o'clock in the evening. They don't have a clue. It's the role of government to be able to do that, and the role of politics to be able to do that.
Okay, that's a very interesting one, and it does hold for, especially when you look at the National Development Plan, but you seem to be itching, and something should be a submission and a response to Mr. Ochieno.
Two things from his submission that we need to seriously interrogate.
Okay.
The issue of leadership, because he said maybe those elected are wanting, and I think that may not be the problem with the central government. Maybe all of us need to join hands and say, look, if you are electing, elect somebody who is reasonable enough, somebody who will follow up on the policies, on the funds that have come. We have a challenge that even some of our leaders do not know the programs at the local government level. If you ask very many to tell you how many funds come to, how many kinds of funds come to the districts, they will not know. The other time I was arguing with a councillor from one of the districts, and I was asking him, do you know that government is sending discretionary development equalization grant to you? And what is this fund meant for? And the person couldn't really answer. Yes, but they talk about DDEG, because that is DDEG. But do they know what the funds under DDEG are meant for? I talked about Duka roads. Do they know that the government sends that? That is, I think, the challenge on whom we elect. In fact, for me, I would think that if you're electing somebody at the local government level, you elect somebody who can interpret some documents, somebody who can read reports, somebody who can also write a report in case that person is elected or appointed on a committee at a local government.
Okay,
level.
that's perfectly understandable, but it's the ideal situation you're seeking, whereby you want, for example, the average voter to have the ability to understand who needs to be in what position and who should not. Yet, the challenges they face are completely different from that level. They are thinking about their ability to get food for the day, and the candidate that is seemingly promising that is the one they see as the ultimate candidate. So let's first disengage the leadership from this conversation. We shall a little bit later look at how the politics of the day does define service delivery and the standards that we see across board. But let me come back to who is superintending the local governments, especially in light of the Public Finance Management Act. The Minister of Finance does have a whole blanket role here because of the ability to dispense funds at that point. We have seen incidents where the Ministry of Local Government is also like a waiting partner, despite the fact that it has all the mandate to be able to run business. I do not know how things are right now, but the Ministry of Local Government ought to step into the driving seat, despite the fact that the resources do come from the Minister of Finance.
I think government made it deliberately that the revenue collector and revenue collection should be centered. It was strategic because of the corruption and what have you, even at the local government level. And number two, a local government used it to collect graduated tax. You remember very well.
Yeah.
And that one was phased out. Then the government has also phased out these tolls, the tolls where they collect funds, because it's still due to corruption. So right now, when the money is collected, it goes to the center, and the center sends it back to the respective ministries, agencies, and departments of government, local government inclusive. So I think, to me, that may not be a big problem. The only issue is, when the money comes, is this money put to the right use? Are the leaders, much as you said we should leave them, but you can't really.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Are they following up on the funds? Well, you can say at the district there is an RDC, that's okay. There is a cow who is an accounting officer or a town clerk for the cities and the municipalities and the town councils. That one is okay. But this leader I'm working with, can this leader follow up on the funds that are channeled to the local governments? The answer is actually what I need to hear from.
But that might tie you a bit. That might tie you a bit, because
it could.
If you're the RDC, and we still need to know what your jobs are, and if part of your job is actually to connect central government, to monitor and to do that,
oversight,
that should really be strategically your role to make sure that these things are actually happening. But anyway,
we are trying.
All right, let me ask.
We need the other leaders to join us.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure those calls are coming through from just about all people. But let me be hypothetical here and put this situation on the table in terms of revenue collection, because it comes down to the Public Finance Management Act and how the money is channeled to the central government, and then the disbursement begins, which some other local governments may feel that they've been cheated, so to say. For example, where an urban center or a town has an economic activity that generates a lot of income, and then the amount of money it receives in terms of disbursements is not corresponding to what they think goes to the central government, but another local government that doesn't actually send or an equal amount of money like it does gets the funds. It's a bit of a disconnect, but for example, is it tenable right now in Uganda to have the local governments use up to 60% of their own revenue and decide what to do with it, but of course with some oversight from government, instead of sending the whole batch of money to the central government and then again beg.
Administratively, it absolutely doesn't make sense. And they can actually see the shambles involved. And as I said, Chris, Ministry of Local Government in the first Obote government and the second Obote government, meaning the last governments, which was sensible, then, no, I'm not saying this was sensible. I was just trying to make a point here.
I do,
so sorry, and if anything, I want to hold back.
All right, perfectly understood.
The Minister of Local Government, the Minister of Local Government is amongst the most important people sitting in cabinet. In fact, they should really sort of be at par with finance simply for what the ministry is all about. Ministry of Local Government really is basically the ministry of all the services for the citizens outside big capitals. So really, therefore, the ministry, local government's jobs should be such that you collect what you have. But the idea that, well, Butaleja will have to collect some things down the road and then send this money to Kampala and then at a particular time beg and come back. The corruption that my brother is talking about, of course, basically encouraging it. You're encouraging corruption, you're encouraging inefficiency, and encouraging all the fudge and time wasting and everything else. No, what governments do, and actually, as you said, my Charlie, and my brother, you guys, you do a lot of benchmarking. Do benchmarking with other governments. And for me, I've worked in local government, by the way, I've worked in local government elsewhere. What you do is, what is it that Ginger can collect? What is it that Kamuli is collecting? Kamuli is part of your child because you're a central government. Kamuli can collect only up to 20% of what they require, to perform in terms of education, health, and all the local services. Quite clearly, you're not going to give them the same amount of money, that Ginger that collects maybe, 80% of whose deficit, 40%, which is part of the question that you're raising. The central government does that. You monitor, you make sure that, well, they're not fudging figures, and you make sure that, well, at the end of the day, whatever happens, they'll do quarterly returns, annual returns, and then you monitor them like that, and then basically disperse funds as applicable. How this becomes a complicated thing, honestly, I genuinely don't know. In any case, things to do with education and things to do with health, some of those are common sense, straightforward things that, well, you disperse from the center, let local government manage, and in any case, you are not going to say that Busolwe, or in this case Butaleja, you're going to get money from street collection, from market collections, and use them to rehabilitate Busolwe Hospital. Those are things that are centrally and nationally controlled. So I think it's really how we've been able to set up and reorganize these things. I think they're huge wastages. We need to be able to have a quick, urgent review of some of these things. Okay,
talking about quick, urgent review, we shall be engaging into that and looking at the challenges as you had earlier shared so that we can understand exactly what the way forward looks like. Do stay with us. Time now for a short break. MorningAt NTV does continue right after. Welcome back. We're glad you're still with us. The Kickstarter discussion is on, and we are talking deepening decentralization and devolution to support development. A critical look at the guidelines for service delivery and standards. With me in the studio is the Deputy RCC Rubaga, Henry Kitambula, as well as Joseph Ochieno, a leading seasoned political analyst and commentator. Their take on matters decentralization cannot be missed. Before we went into the break, I had put it to Mr. Kitambula to take us through what some of the challenges that local governments are facing across the country. The sheer notion that resources can be transferred to the center and then disbursed back to the local government does a lot in shrinking the space for decision making on the part of the local leaders. If I am to decide on what goes to what particular aspect of an economy, a local economy, but have to wait on a critical element that could alter this particular decision that we want to make at local level, is a challenge that many are facing. We should also understand and rather appreciate that there are so many local governments in Uganda right now. This is in light, especially on the aspects of districts that we do have, and it's also a challenge. But like I said, Bwana RCC, this is one great challenge, the multiplicity of local governments in this country. Even before we begin to want to iron out our problems, the numbers, the sheer numbers are untenable.
Of course, it's a challenge because it constrains the resources of the nation.
Does, yeah.
Because for every district, you must pay the workers. You must facilitate the political leaders. Then at times you have to construct an administrative unit for them. And so on and so forth. So it's a very big challenge, and that's why I think government has put to halt the creation of more new districts and municipalities, much as we are.
Can we bet on that?
We are elevating,
especially in light of
areas.
2026 coming up.
We are not creating any new district.
All right.
But I think we shall only elevate some areas.
So can come down.
We shall only elevate some areas,
okay,
some districts to cities.
City status.
But I heard my boss, the Prime Minister, saying right now we may not have funds, so we can put it on hold for now. Okay. But that plan is there. However, for the creation of new districts, I don't think whether government is taking it up now. Now, the other challenge that I want also to point out is the challenge of the remittance of what goes to the villages and the parishes. When this money comes to Kampala, to the center, a certain percentage is taken back. And my brother here, there are two parameters they use. One, the population.
Yeah, they should.
The population.
The size, yeah.
Yes, population size. Then number two, what you send to the center. I mean, to the center, your resources, what is collected from your district. So that one is the yardstick. Now, when that money goes to the districts, we expect the districts to remit the percentage that is meant for the villages and the parishes. I think it's around 25 and 15. Now, in many districts, this money does not go to the villages. So that means that last unit, which is the village, you are constraining it from doing a few service delivery because they are not getting their 25%. The same applies to the parish. I think that is something that the Minister for Local Government should address. When I was in Jinja, I really struggled for Southern Division to get some remittance from the areas, because they had accumulated areas from the time when Jinja was a municipality. So around 3-4 years, they had not got anything. For Northern Division, actually I left because I was not the one in charge of it. I left when they had not got anything. So I think that is something that the Ministry of Local Government should address, because when we are implementing services, we want even what is supposed to be done by the village is done. It looks awkward when the village comes to the district or comes to hijack leaders to solicit money to go and repair a borehole. Yet this 25% can be used to repair a borehole at the village. I think that is one challenge that should be addressed.
Okay. Before we go on to the next challenge, allow me have Joseph Ochieno give us his 2 cents on particularly these challenges, actually challenges or not, because one thing I know is that the current setup pretty much allows for, what can I say, when we hear the president, for example, let me just bring it this way. When we hear the president say, I want leaders who will work with me, it does put the proposition on the table that if this particular local leader is one that aligns well with the president of the country in terms of party loyalty, then this local government is bound to have the resources that it needs. Unlike the one that has a leader who is not in line with what the president wants.
Not true.
This has constrained service delivery, and it is propped by the president of the country.
That's not true. That's not true, because I've been in local government. I've even been in areas where there is opposition, where I am in Machindi. I mean, where I was in Machindi, now where I am in Rubaga. I've been working with opposition leaders. And when you look at Rubaga right now, KCCA is implementing the construction of very many roads, but the leadership is not NRM. When I was in Jinja, the leadership was also
be seen to work because KCCA and Kampala is a tinderbox.
Jinja,
but there are things that are happening
I'm
across.
giving you another example. Jinja, the mayor of Jinja is a NUP person. Many councillors are from NUP and FDC, but we have been supporting that area with a lot of funds to ensure that things change. In fact, when I left Jinja, I left when the government had even embarked on the development of source of the Nile, and the mayor was the big man. The big man is I did not even speak. He was the one speaking on behalf of the local government. So that that statement is not true.
All right.
Maybe it is politically driven, but
no,
actually it's not.
I have no inclinations.
No. Of course, you get from the public. So not
Joseph,
use the public.
This dilemma has been with us for a while, and the president is very clear on it. If the leader is not one that aligns with me, service delivery is going to be difficult.
And not only that, I will take Tororo. That actually gives a blank check and has been giving a blank check to these guys for the last 37 years. And one of the things I said is that because you're giving these guys a blank check, there is no reason for these guys to be under pressure to deliver. So he said that several times. No, quite clearly, the issue is, in my opinion, leadership, and it's something that we need to centrally review very, very urgently. Really, local government ministry at the center, together with the Ministry of Planning, if there is such a ministry, and finance, we simply say that, look, this is Project Uganda, this is what is for health, this is what is for education, this is what for infrastructure. Now, what element of it is local government, meaning a district? What element of them are counties? In any case, I'm just looking at our book at the back again. I'm just trying to think that maybe if these guys have failed the money which they failed or they're struggling with it, maybe we might review things to do with the infrastructure, part of the conversation we've been having. And I know some people might say what Joseph and Chris and Bukedi, but it's just a clear example. That if you look at Nagongera-Busolwe Road, it brings the two districts together. If you look at my concern about Butaleja Road via my Bukedi College, Kachonga, and things like that, they're integrated roads and they cut across. These are things that you should not leave for Butaleja. These are things that you should not leave for Toro. These are things that you should not leave for particular local governments. These are should be part of national strategic planning. In which case, then you find district leaders from the sub-region should be able to strategically think together and make sure that resources are dispersed for them. But on the point of the president saying that I will only work with my people. These are things that should actually be embedded in legislation. You should simply say that, look, if you're a particular district, meaning Chinoni district, if there's such a district called Chinoni, these are your requirements. You will collect ABCD. These are things that you retain locally. These are things that you return to central government. These are part of your returns annually. And if these are things that you're actually doing, on a quarterly basis, and you're not hitting your targets, what are the penalties? And those penalties should really be much more of local administration rather than politics. So meaning somebody should be able to know that, well, if my district is not performing to meet a particular criteria, I have a responsibility to if you like, to report. And I'm reporting to Ministry of Local Government, not to the minister, but to the officials of the ministry who use a particular criteria which has been sent as a benchmark across the country, regardless of the political affiliations. And as I said again, regardless of the income circumstances of the district. In any case, actually, since we're part of this is also about infrastructure, when we know a Kotido district is struggling as a district, it's the responsibility of central government to say that, well, we shall be able to put specialist funds to be able to cater for districts that are struggling, be it Kotido, it could be Budude because of particular circumstances, in case, or perhaps recently a situation that we had with the Karuma, and so what amount of money are we giving Nwaya in order for them to be able to beef up some of the infrastructure as a result of the challenges that were impacted as a result of Karuma Breach. So strategic national thinking and leadership. Yes. Okay,
RCC.
Yes,
the chief accounting officers have often found themselves in a line of fire from the president as well as the minister for finance and the permanent secretary and secretary to the treasury on account of what they do or what they don't do. And it's a bit of a conflict because their mandate is clear, but when it comes to how they execute their roles and do their work, the influences from the central government are enormous, and many have found themselves in the spot of bother to the extent they are told, if you act in a certain way, that is entirely on you and not the government for that matter. How is that anomaly being addressed?
The chief administrative officers, accounting officers, and they know what they are supposed to do. So if you don't account in time, if you don't submit a budget in time,
that's right. If
you don't send the payroll in time for your workers to be catered for, then you really get pressure from the center. And I think that pressure is called for. Even the penalties, including removing you as an accounting officer. You can be a cow, but you are not an accounting officer, because that one has always been done. And because government and the ministry wants to strengthen accountability and a timely delivery of what the cow, the chief administrative officer or the town clerks are supposed to deliver every year, they must check you. Are you doing well? So you account every financial year. And that's one. Number two, there were some districts that could take back almost a quarter of the monies that are sent. So you have not utilized the money. You are complaining the money is little, but even what they have given you, you haven't utilized it. So as the accounting officer and the chief implementer of government programs in the district, you will be asked why. We gave you these billions. You are returning almost $1 billion.
And I think that's the point Chris is making. We're in the 27th year. That is common and continues to be common. To the extent, therefore, that while we may be saying that things are failing at the top, if people are failing to implement these programs at local or at least district levels, and the chief accounting officer as the top is not doing anything, they take responsibility. And
that's it. That's it, and that's why we are tough on them. But the other thing I also want to bring to your attention, there are services that are done by the central government in a local government.
Yes.
Those services are there, and they are specified in one of the schedules of the Local Government Act. So things to do with health, it is central government. Security, then there are roads that are from Ministry of Works and Transport.
Great. I'm glad you bring it up that way, and that should be able to form my ability to draw this picture very clearly for those that are watching and may not be in on the nitty-gritties of local government work. When, for example, funds that are meant for a health center that is critical service to any one community do not come through on time, but funds designed for another project that is in line with, say, for example, the World Bank or IDF, all these institutions, is rolled out, and the chief accounting officers find themselves stuck up. They have a lot of money that is project hinged, it's going into some other project, and a health center that is critically needed doesn't have the funds. And the dilemma is, how do we disburse? You end up at the end of the financial year telling government that this money is coming back, just like you said, unutilized funds, in light of the fact that these funds are heavily ring-fenced for particular projects, and accounting officers don't have the leverage to, for example, say, we can do this as long as we can show accountability and good finance practices.
We are cognizant of the fact that there are some special services that require urgent attention, like the health sector you are talking about. Giving an example of a health center. And first of all, the delivery of the medicine is government. The delivery of what is supposed to be used for vaccination or immunization of our children is by government. But in addition, because the government knows, central government knows that these health facilities within a local government setup need some working capital to cater for a few things. All the health centers are given what we call primary health care funds. So that one can handle some of those eventualities. But is that money put to the right use? That is what we can also interrogate.
And why not? And then what is...
And that is, it takes us into the aspect of corruption and how it has completely put the nervous system of the government, both at local and at the center, into some sort of dysfunctional momentum. There is a tendency, for example, to even imagine that those that are planning for disbursement of funds have to include corruption-related thefts and losses as miscellaneous. It's getting to that point, you know?
You know, we can't shy away from the fact that there is corruption.
Yeah.
And many people are corrupt only that they have not got chances to reach where.
What is the point?
That is stereotypical, by the way.
What is important? What is important? Personally, I'm not corrupt.
You're trying to suggest that those that complain about others being corrupt haven't been given an opportunity to be corrupt.
All of us should come up and fight corruption. Shouldn't be a one-man's battle.
That is right.
And we are battling with what we call syndicated corruption. I've ever successfully handled one case of syndicated corruption.
Take us through that. Syndicated corruption.
During the time I was in Namayingo, they had actually swindled the money for 3 YLP groups. So they could make...
That is youth livelihood program.
They could make 3 ghost groups. The assistant cow was involved. The focal person of YLP was involved. And they could use 1 sub-county chief and a sub-accountant. So the sub-county chief was on transfer every financial year. So you go there, this is the time we shall actually register the groups from yours. Now change to this sub-county, like now.
The State House Anti-Corruption Unit just has
by then it had not...
It has a lead right now, because corruption investigations can go back.
No, I successfully handled the matter because those people... I took them up to anti-corruption court and they were made to pay the money with a fine because they entered into a pre-bargaining.
Okay.
You see, so... But at the district, have you ever heard about what we call the Contracts Committee?
Contracts Committee, we do hear about them.
Those contracts committee that are supposed to give contracts to those people we contract to carry out services, the syndicated corruption that is with them is too much, to the extent that the amount of constructing, for example, a pit latrine at a school, when you look at, when they will tell you 25 millions. 18 million a pit latrine.
Sanitation facility.
Sanitation facility. So the amount is so much exaggerated because of the syndicated corruption within the Contracts Committee. When I was in Jinja, I argued with them. We have a seed school called Masese. Government gave this school additional 1 billion for classroom construction. Now, the 1 billion they wanted to construct around 2 classrooms. And I told them, how can we have only 2 classrooms?
So billions.
Now, what I did, I said, yes, much as I may not be so right, but let me convince you to contact UPDF Engineering Brigade to come and construct this, the facility for us. And I'm telling you, instead of the 2 classroom block that the Contracts Committee wanted the contract to construct, they are constructing at least a storied building. You can see the difference.
Joseph Ochieno, the stories of corruption are basically something that, it's not a new story, but the shape and the depth that this particular vice has put its hold onto the society keeps taking us back. When you talk about that, we do understand, but how best can this be fought? You told me about benchmarks. You've worked in local government, not in Uganda. Where was that?
No, unfortunately, not in Uganda.
Please share.
I am yet to do.
You've worked in local government in the UK.
I work in local government in London, and some of these things in UK and various local governments. Actually, some of these things are extraordinary.
It would be unfair to expect local governments here to work like local governments in Uganda.
Chris, that's not true. Okay. Because I also lived in Uganda pre-NRA, and local governments worked. And by the way, it's unfortunate that I would bring it towards a close. I think the submissions being made by my brother here actually shows that he should actually head the State House Anti-Corruption Unit. But unfortunately, under a future UPC administration, possibly I would make him responsible as one of the operational people in local government, because I don't think State House should have an anti-corruption unit. These are evidence of failure. Quite clearly, I think after 40 years, this government is tired and basically just needs to change direction. Because my brother is actually lamenting, because we know what the issues are and we know who the people are. We just need to change of direction, change of tone, to the extent that a president is able to shout down the head of inspectorate of government who's actually talking corruption, say, don't go there, so long as we steal them in Jinja or Kampala and then go and invest them somewhere in Tungamo. I think it's not good enough. We know what the issues are, we just need a change of direction. You know what? A scintilla of corruption, report to the police and let the police deal. Many of these anti-corruption units are actually duplicates, and actually in any case, it's a huge amount of unnecessary spends of money. People were talking about school supplies, and I'm saying, in primary school I was a prefect, in secondary school I was prefect. I can't remember a time when a child would seek to steal a book, because you steal it to go and sell to one, you don't need it because the books are there, but you steal it, your whole village is actually going to denounce you, your family's name is going to be erased off the textbooks for forever. No, it's a leadership issue which needs to come from the top. But I think we also need to review local government operations from the center. We have a situation in Nagongera in which we are in Nagongera and electricity comes and you find areas around the town without electricity. But some rural villages in the extremes, as I said, you can count Namwaya, Magundo, Pukongo, including where the big power things are there, simply because either somebody had not voted properly in the particular local area, or because the local councillors think that they're sending these things to particular places where they might be wanting to get votes. And some of these things may be associated with people, including parliamentary candidates. Okay. So these are some of the problems. And unfortunately, the people who are suffering are the ordinary citizens at the expense of bad politics.
Many thanks, gentlemen. We're going into a break, but the political year is upon us, and many times local governments suffer so much in the beatings that happen, be it on the financial and administrative front. We'll be looking at how this will affect service delivery and, most importantly, the shape of local government across the country as we inch closer to the general election. Turn to the studio and enter the final bend of our Kickstarter discussion this morning, where we are looking at decentralization and the devolution efforts to support national development, specifically the guidelines for service delivery standards. And the discussion that we've had so far with Deputy RCC for Rubaga, Henry Kitambula, as well as seasoned commentator Joseph Ochieno, does give us an overview of exactly where we are. The challenges are enormous for local governments across the country, especially in light of the fact that aspects including funds continue to come to the center first and then disbursed to the local governments. Again, that alone kind of stifles decision making, as the local leaders must wait on to certain modalities before they can figure out what to do for their local communities. Gentlemen, you've heard that is an event that is ongoing, but before we finalize with that discussion, I don't necessarily want to delve into the nitty-gritty of what will be happening, but of course it's been a bone of contention, and the country has been grappling with interpretation after interpretation of what the General Court Martial should be doing. My interest in that particular story, and as the Lord Mayor, who happens to be a legal counsel and part of the team that is defending Kizza Besigye, is the politics of the day and how they affect what happens on other fronts. And the fact that people find themselves incarcerated, they find themselves persecuted in the eyes of some, on account of what they believe, I think should open the country to reflection at this particular moment in time. Because if we don't solve one thing the best possible way, we end up failing on another front, and by the time we know it, corruption, killings do engulf us. I do not know what your sentiment is in as far as Kizza Besigye's latest dilemmas are, but this is a political year. This is bound to happen as we go into the election. What do you think should be the actors' sentiment? What should the actors within the arena of politics as we go into 2026 be? What is your prayer?
Chris, I pray for common sense to prevail in this country. I pray as we start the new year that leadership prevails in this country. And I pray that since there has been huge excitement over Christmas, that in the last several weeks you look at Ugandans and you think all of us are angels near the boundaries of Jesus Christ's homestead. That we examine our conscience as a citizen, as a citizen, all of us, yeah. But that leadership must prevail from the top. And I hope Mr. Museveni, in whose family I understand there are pastors and bishops they invoke. Yesterday, a legislator was laid to rest. I happened to have chosen the other day to go to the vigil at Segrinya's home and see families and see people and see members of NUP and see ordinary Ugandans and see ordinary citizens going there and to see the anger. And then even me as Ochieno, and to wonder, this young boy born around the time post my university and has his life destroyed. Sigrinya's complexity started with being arrested, detained, and denied bail. So in any case, every average Ugandan has got every reason to say that this man's death is suspect and that somebody takes responsibility. That directly then links me to the question of Kizza Besigye and Aaron Kizza. I happened to have been at the court-martial tribunal the other day, where the soldiers really feel irritated when you call it a tribunal. I repeat, it's actually a tribunal. And so how the bundling of people merely under comrade areas, Lukwago and Martha, you better make sure that you leave there in time, because just merely getting into the gate was a problem. Getting through the immediate check was a problem. Accessing the tribunal is a problem. Then you find Kizza Aaron accessing the area for the lawyers' design was a problem. And then you see, in what country are we? 40 years and 45 years after Idi Amin? I am just not sure. So I really hope that common sense prevails, and that when these guys are arguing today, they should urgently argue on the matter of jurisdiction to make sure that Kizza Besigye is urgently pulled out of that military thing and taken to the due process of law. And you know where that one is the formal civil court, not the military tribunal where he is at the moment. Okay.
RCC Kitambula, you will be at the center of ensuring order and the security intelligence in place in Rubaga ahead of the political season. We've seen RCCs and RDCs heavily involved in meetings that are designed to ensure that the political process, especially the electioneering, does not turn violent. I do not know whether you are already on ground on that or anticipating.
Of course, that is for I'm not transferred. This will be my second time to handle elections in Kampala.
Yeah.
Because 2016 I was in Kampala, so this will be the second time. And of course we are anticipating some wrong misconduct during campaigns and maybe during elections. However, my prayer, which I want to make, is that let us all exercise political tolerance.
Yeah.
Let us know that beyond politics will remain one person, could remain one person, could remain Ugandans.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you short. Gentlemen, many thanks. Let's now go to Machindi Court Martial, where our very own Galiwango reporter on ground is to bring us the latest. I'm reliably informed that our team is on ground, and retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye has arrived at the General Court Martial premises in Machindi, and what you're seeing is the situation. Typical traditional military police entourage making its way into the premises of the General Court Martial, where the proceedings are expected to begin in earnest. The heavy security is reminiscent of such events and trials, especially in light of the high-profile nature of the opposition figure who is involved in this particular one. The contestations, of course, and the debates do continue on the jurisdiction of that particular General Court Martial to conduct business that has a civilian like Kiza Besigye, and of course the controversy surrounding the sentencing a few days ago of advocate Aaron Kiza, who belongs to the team that is lining up the defense for the retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye, as well as his AD, Obeid Lutale. The situation there is very tense, and we can see retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye, his AD, Obeid Lutale, being escorted by a group of warders from the Uganda Prison Service into the court. There we are, pretty much very, very reminiscent of scenes that we have seen often as the General Court Martial conducts business. The lawyers who we earlier saw convening at the City Hall, I'm told, are now also making their way to Machindi, and our team will be covering that. Joseph Ochieno and RCC Henry Kitambula, it's been a pleasure having your company on the show, discussing the deepening of decentralization as well as devolution to support development in the country. What you shared with us has emboldened our understanding of some of these concepts, and we do hope that going forward, Uganda will be able to reap the benefits of decentralization as they were envisaged by the gentlemen and ladies that opined this particular framework more than 27 years ago. It's been a pleasure having your company on MorningAt NTV. On behalf of my colleague, Priscilla Regina Naloga, and indeed the team behind the scenes, we shall see you tomorrow.